First, as we start the program, the Taliban took the Afghan capital, Kabul, Sunday afternoon, sealing their control of Afghanistan much faster than many had anticipated. Meanwhile, American troops scrambled to evacuate thousands of U.S. diplomats and Afghans from the U.S. embassy as President Biden remained silent up until an hour ago when he finally addressed the nation from the White House.
If anything, the developments of the past week reinforced that ending U.S. military involvement in Afghanistan now was the right decision. American troops cannot and should not be fighting in a war and dying in a war that Afghan forces are not willing to fight for themselves.
It was an interesting press conference for those of you who were able to watch it. President Biden has been facing criticism from both the left and the right. Over the weekend, CNN's Jake Tapper went hard at the administration in general. There was a Trafalgar poll, and I'm going to see if I can get this thrown up on the screen, from over the weekend showing that 60% of Americans strongly disapproved of President Biden's handling of the Afghanistan situation. And that's 70% who generally disapprove. So 70% disapprove, 60% of those, approximately 59%, strongly disapprove of President Biden's handling. So he has a press conference this afternoon where, without taking questions, he makes a statement in which he essentially asserts that he has done everything correctly and he would do it again. It's going to be interesting to see if this appeases the criticism that he's getting, because, of course, it isn't just the fact that there's a withdrawal happening. The way that withdrawal is happening is a big part of the challenge. And of course, the timeline the timeline that the Taliban was expected to take over Afghanistan has sped up so much based on the initial projections. And we know that last month, President Biden was insistent that it was not inevitable at all that the Taliban was going to take over the country. And last week, he was saying, well, it might happen, but it's going to be 60 to 90 days. But with me now to talk about this, the latest developments in Afghanistan, is U.S. Representative Mike Waltz, a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and a decorated Special Forces officer with multiple combat tours in Afghanistan, the Middle East, and Africa. He serves the 6th Congressional District of Florida. Congressman Waltz, welcome back to the program.
Yeah, good to be with you.
Well, we're glad to have you. I'm sorry about what we're talking about, frankly. But tell us, what's your response to what's happening in Afghanistan right now?
Well, I think this is going to go down to one of the top foreign policy disasters of modern American history. This is a disaster from a human rights standpoint. The women, the civil society leaders, the Afghan interpreters that are being hunted down as we speak, that are desperately reaching out to me and others. It's a disaster for American credibility. Can you imagine what our allies in places like Taiwan or Ukraine are thinking right now watching this? And it's a disaster for American security. What Biden just does not get is that this isn't just an Afghan civil war or an Afghan problem. Terrorism that happens in Afghanistan doesn't stay in Afghanistan. Al-Qaeda and the Taliban are married at the hip. Al-Qaeda 3.0 will be far worse than its predecessors. And so my question for him is, how long does he let this fester? And either we're going to get hit back in the United States again. His own intelligence community is clear that they fully intend to hit us again. Or are we going to have to send soldiers back in when he's done with this reckless evacuation? But this time you've got a Taliban armed to the teeth, no bases, no local allies, because they've been hunted down in a far, far more difficult situation for those future soldiers that are going to have to deal with this. It is. I'm vacillating between being enraged and grief, as I know so many veterans are.
Now, Congressman Waltz, I don't know if you had a chance to see President Biden's statement about an hour ago. It's interesting. You mentioned China and Russia. And he actually went out of his way during his statement to say one of the reasons why he thought it was important to withdraw was because China and Russia would like nothing more than to have the United States stay in Afghanistan. What do you make of that comment?
Well, again, I just don't know if he's heartless or clueless. But let me tell you, the only country in the world where we had an air base that was sandwiched between China, Russia, and Iran, and gave us the capability to stay on top of half the world's terrorist organizations was Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan, and we just gave it away. So China is thrilled that we're out, and so is Russia. You know, China is already recognizing the Taliban, so much for their international isolation that Jen Psaki was promising, because they want access to the $1 trillion of rare earths and critical minerals that are there, and they have now, along with Pakistan, another ally against India. So this is just a win all around, and for our adversaries, and an incredible blow to our credibility and to our position in the world.
President Biden seems to be making the argument that this is essentially inevitable. There was no other option. The only other option is just endless war, passing this on to a fifth administration. Do you think there was another path to what we're seeing today?
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's two pieces to this, right? There's the decision and the overall strategy. And then even if you feel like we needed to withdraw, then how badly this was done. On the overall decision, look, as long as I appreciate people's frustration, long, hard, expensive, 20 years, but we're fighting an ideology here. We're fighting an idea. It took decades to defeat communism and fascism, and it's going to take decades to defeat Islamic extremism. And as long as Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and other groups intend to use Afghanistan as a place to hit the United States and to hit the homeland, I believe that we are going to have some type of presence. What Biden keeps doing is acting like we have hundreds of thousands of troops there, or would have needed it, if he right, and do nation building. There were all kinds of other solutions, and for him to blame President Trump, he has had no problem tearing up Trump deals, from Keystone to Nord Stream to Iran to the border, but now suddenly he's beholden on this one. It's a feckless and weak excuse.
You make a fair point there that this would be the first time he felt bound by a decision that President Trump had made, if that was in fact what is happening here. But he talks about the 300,000 troops in Afghanistan that U.S. military personnel had trained there. What happened to them? If they existed, where are they?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that he doesn't, and nor does Tony Blinken or others around him that have never served in the Middle East or in Afghanistan, just they don't understand the survivalist psychology there, and how the Taliban so effectively used his announcement. You know, when the narrative is America has abandoned you, you're on your own, the Taliban will eventually win, and they reach out one by one to these individual Afghan military commanders and say, you have two choices. You are either beheaded along with your family, or you can surrender, and we'll let you peaceably leave and go home. And when that's the kind of psychological operation the Taliban were able to use to such strategic effect. A little bit of air power would have drastically bolstered their resolve. I remind people that in 2001, we completely defeated the Taliban with the Air Force and less than 100 American troops on the ground fighting alongside the Afghans. Less than 100. But, this same group that's around Biden was around Obama, and they pulled out of Iraq far too recklessly and far too soon. That led to the rise of ISIS, a caliphate the size of Indiana, attacks around the world, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of lives lost. Because I think they just have zero appreciation, zero understanding of how people think in that part of the world. They keep going back to diplomacy, The Taliban could care less about, frankly, being invited to European cocktail parties. They understand leverage. They understand strength. And only when you have that are they truly willing to negotiate.
Do you think then that President Biden is essentially correct when he says we could not give them the will to fight? Because from a Western perspective, we watch this, we hear how terrible the Taliban is, and we see them essentially going into these cities unopposed. Is it true that they just don't have the will to fight the Taliban, or are they kind of okay with them?
I know I've fought alongside hundreds, if not thousands, of brave Afghan soldiers, incredibly brave. And the ones that were truly willing to stand with us, the interpreters and so many others, are the ones that we've abandoned. Think about that, that we've left behind, and they're being hunted down as we speak. But they absolutely have the will. But it's, again, when they believe there's no hope, when they believe they've been abandoned, when all air support, logistics, intelligence support that we were providing, essentially their kind of life raft, so to speak, is yanked out from under them. A lot of them chose to, rather than, the other tactic the Taliban will do is, imagine if our soldiers are out on the front line and people are beheading their family members. They go after the families, the village, the tribe. And without that kind of support, it's incredibly difficult. But we provide that all over the world. I guarantee you, just by historic reference, if we had pulled out of South Korea in the 1960s, they would have struggled mightily as well. We've seen it in Colombia, the Philippines, Iraq. That's the backbone the United States military provides, but we could have done it with a very, very small footprint and prevented this situation.
Congressman Mike Waltz, we really appreciate your time and your service to our country. Thank you for joining us today.
Okay, thank you.